Hello and welcome back to the Poultry Network Podcast. I'm Tom Woolman.
And my name is Tom Willings.
Hello, Tom.
Good morning, good afternoon. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in again.
Whatever time it is you're tuning in, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. We're really excited this week to be joined by the CEO of RoboScientific, Angela Curtis. Hi, Angela.
Good morning. Well, afternoon even. Yes.
So yes, it loses all meaning, doesn't it? I'd like to think as well we're going out across all sorts of different time zones. You know, there are people in Siberia listening to us, and people in Mexico sat on the beach on their holiday. Wherever you are in the world. So
we're hot off the BFREPA conference. Speaker list, Angela, and I'm gonna say first off, from where I was stood, stock still all day, there were numerous people that came up to me to say, "Did you see the RoboScientific presentation, Tom? Did you manage to get in there?" And the answer was no, I didn't. But no one came for the rest of the day and talked about any other presentation that had been delivered. And as we've already covered in a previous episode, I would say that the lineup was a very, very strong one. Some really good people that I would have loved to have listened to. But from everyone I spoke to, your presentation was the one that got the most positive remarks, got the only positive remarks. But we thought it would be fantastic to get you onto the podcast, just in case anybody that wasn't at the event didn't get a chance to listen to you, and we can give this as much airtime as possible.
Well, that's really exciting to hear, I must admit. I think the thing that we give hope. And it's always good to be the person giving hope, not reporting on the latest avian flu figures or whatever it may be, as important as those things can be. So
yes,
let's jump into it then, and just. And sorry, Tom, I apologise. I was going to say, should we jump into it and just start from the very, very top of, what are we talking about? What is it that RoboScientific do?
Well, we're very excited because finally we are at the point where we can say that we have got working prototypes about to go on farm. And I say finally because it's taken us 10 years to get here. What we do is we take volatile organic compounds, VOCs, and we sniff the air in a chicken shed to see what VOCs are present and to see if we can find a relationship between the digital fingerprint of the VOCs and a specific disease or condition.
So now, this technology is used in quite a lot of other sectors already, isn't it, Angela? Is that right?
It's as old as the hills. If you're as old as I am, you would have watched George III, that film about when he had that awful urine disease, and all that the doctors were doing was sniffing his pee. And effectively, I hate to say it, that's what we do. We're just like an automatic dog. We go around sniffing the air to see what's there. And
I didn't catch George III, but I've been into plenty of chicken sheds and used my nose and can tell the difference between things going well and things not going quite so well. But we're breaking new ground with the George III reference.
Exactly. So we're volatile organic compounds. It's the chemical components that are in the smells that are created by the host organism. So that can be a human, an animal, a bird, a plant. And the patterns that are being emitted are the things that we've been looking at to see when we can identify the specific pattern of the VOCs that are coming out that relate to a specific disease. It's a bit like a digital fingerprint.
And then how many of these sort of sensors are we talking about in a house, or in, take a typical broiler shed? How big a kind of investment in equipment are we talking about here?
Well, it's very difficult to describe because actually we're not talking about sensors per se. It's not like, the little CO2 sensor in the roof or anything, but it is a box. It's a box that's about 18 inches cube. I did tell you I'm old enough to be not metric. And in that box, we have a sensor array of 24 different VOCs. And they can maybe be 24 different VOCs, or they can be a variety of, say, 8 of one VOC and 2 of another. It just depends what we're looking for, so that when the air is passed over the sensors, all of the sensors react. We actually say, okay, we're looking for coccidiosis, say. So what we're going to look at is we're going to look out of those 24 sensors, we're going to look at, say, sensor 3, sensor 6, and sensor 18. And we're going to look at what the responses of those 3 sensors are. Or maybe we're going to be looking at, Campylobacter, which is not something anyone worries too much about these days. But if we're looking at Campylobacter, we could be looking at sensor 10, sensor 11, and sensor 20. It just depends. So that's how we get the differentiation, and it's how we're able to look for a variety of diseases. But each of the 24 sensors is an independent sensor providing to the whole answer.
Mm. And you've been trialling this technology obviously fairly extensively for a good number of years in both layers and broilers, then, is that correct?
Not in layers. We're just entering the wonderful world of layers. And I must admit, I love it. I go to a laying farm and I come home with a tray of eggs. It's just wonderful.
They're worth an awful lot of money at the moment.
I know.
Yeah.
They don't last long in my house, I have to say. But,
Angela, you've mentioned cocci, you've mentioned Campylobacter, and obviously layers. Those 2 infections were probably not the top of the list of concerns for farmers. What could you detect in a laying shed that would be, most relevant to a laying farm?
Almost anything, I would say, in time. At the moment, we're starting to look, and the thing I haven't got in front of, we're looking at erysipelas, because that's clearly something that's got a high mortality, and it's very important. Mycoplasma, we think we're going to be looking at that. I'm particularly excited because I have a meeting. This is my life. I have a meeting next week with an academic who spends his life looking at red mites. And we're going to discuss how we might be able to sense red mites. We know we'll be able to see them because they're a parasite, therefore they're an organism, therefore they will be emitting VOCs. However, what we don't know is, can we just see red mites, or can we say if there are a few red mites hiding in a crevice, or are there a shed full that needs some attention? Because I gather that is a fairly significant challenge when you get to about April or May.
Yeah, I would have put infectious bronchitis on the list.
That was the other one, yes.
Yeah, and as you say, red mite, but red mite not necessarily being a disease. But you've already answered my question, really, and we're fascinated to hear how the conversation with the academic goes. Yeah,
well, the thing that we have established, and COVID, remarkably, was a huge help to us in this. One of the nice things that came out of the pandemic, and who'd have thought we'd be saying that, was the amount of work that went into viruses and VOCs, because as you were saying, Tom, there's an awful lot of work has gone into VOCs over the years. So it's not a brand new technology. What we do with it is. So viruses, although they're inorganic, they do change the way that we metabolize things. So the way we metabolize the chemicals within our body changes the volatile signatures that we're sending out. And therefore, when we are looking for a virus in a shed, we can see that using the VOC signatures of the host. So that's how we do that.
So, and how do you think this would work in practice then, with this technology when it's up and running on farm? How would it work with the farmer and their management of the flock?
Well, interestingly, we did a lot of work with pigs, where we were working with a company using cameras for behavioural indications. And what we discovered was, if you're doing a camera recording of what's happening on a farm, you need an enormous amount of data. If we're looking at our VOC information, it's tiny packets of data, because ultimately what the farmer needs as I understand it, and as the ones that I've spoken to have said to me, is they need to know at the start of every day what's happening with their birds. If anything like avian flu is a real concern, then they probably need to know, say, every 6 hours. But they do not need to be told every 10 minutes that, yeah, we checked the birds, they're fine. And it won't work anyway, because the key thing with VOC sensing is the sample quality. It's like any test. It's only as good as the samples. So what we do is we sample the air. We gather in the air that's in a chicken shed for about an hour typically. And that is about 3,000 litres of air in a broiler shed. And once we've got all the air gathered in, we've collected it onto an adsorbent pad. We're concentrating down all the VOCs that have passed through in that hour. We then remove them from the adsorbent pad, pass them over the sensors to see what's there. That's how we get a much higher level of concentration of the sensors. It also incidentally means we get a much more universal sample. So rather than relying on somebody to wander through the shed with boot swabs, or picking up maybe an occasional bird for culling, and it's a random choice, we're actually looking at the whole picture of what's happening in the shed. We're analysing it to see what patterns we get from that. And so that's how it works. And so then once that's happened, all of the data is passed up onto a cloud ideally, although I live near Norfolk and connectivity isn't the best. So we're probably going to be working with Bluetooth as well. If we've got that level of connectivity, then the farmer will get it on his smartphone or he'll get it on a dashboard. So he will be notified. So, for example, in broiler sheds, which is where, as I said before, we've done most of our work, what we're seeing is we tend to sample at 5 o'clock in the morning. We finish sampling at 6 o'clock in the morning. By 6:05 in the morning, if anything's happening in the shed that needs to be notified, the farmer knows about it, so that when the stockman goes in at 7 o'clock, he knows what the status of that shed is.
And is that recording always at the same time each day? Because I could imagine that the atmosphere is changing with different levels of activity, or birds doing particular functions at particular times that would again change the atmosphere.
It doesn't change the atmosphere, because the wonderful thing about VOCs is that they're either there or they're not.
Okay.
If they're there, then the reason that they're there is there too. If they're not there, then the reason has gone away. So it's a very real-time status report on what's happening in the shed. And we tend to do it at 5 in the morning because, obviously for layers, it's ideal, because if you have free-range layers, they're in overnight. So we've got time to get a nice, healthy collection of VOCs in the atmosphere. And in broiler sheds, again, atmosphere tends to close down a bit overnight. There's no human activity to corrupt the VOC signatures or anything. And so everything that's in the shed overnight tends to be coming from the chickens. And so we can see what it is.
And how clued up does the farmer, the producer, the grower need to be in interpreting results? Do they see an outfeed of pure data, and that they need to be able to identify where things have changed, or is it being presented to them in a already interpreted view that they can see something has changed, and this is the consequence of what's changed? This is the interpreted kind of impact of that change.
Yeah, what we're still developing the app and the dashboard, but the intention is pretty much like the other dashboards and the apps that you see. It's very much geared to giving the farmer the information he needs. So it will, for example, it will say if we see bronchitis, then it would say, we believe there's an indication from the VOCs that this is in the shed, you should go look. Or it could be that there's something going on in the shed that the sensors identify as being different, but they don't know what it is. So then it will just give a general alert that says, we think you should go and check your birds.
Yeah. Ever get a false reading or a false alarm? Do you set people off with, my goodness, we've got avian influenza here. Oh, no, don't panic.
We can never say never, can you? But our belief is it's as once we've got sufficient data, then every packet of data that we collect will add to the information that we're delivering. So at the moment, the indications are we're very accurate. I mean, typically, if we get beneath sort of 80%, 85% accuracy, sensitivity and specificity is what we're talking about with sensors, then we would be concerned. But typically, we would expect to be higher than that. But again, you can never say never, because there's always going to be something going on that hasn't occurred before or you haven't come across. So there is a kind of a health warning with all this stuff. What we're also looking at is, in terms of the more complicated data, is creating a dashboard that would work for vets, so that we can give vets a kind of an advanced training so that they can do deep dives in, because the ultimate, we believe, with our system is it will be predictive. So, for example, with, again, if I go to broilers, because that's where we've got the work and I'm most familiar with it, so forgive me. With necrotic enteritis, you have coccidiosis, then you get Clostridium perfringens, and then you get necrotic enteritis. So what we can do is we can say, oh, yeah, and we did a study of this actually in America, which proved it. Cocci was introduced to the birds on day 17. Yep, we saw it. Then I think about 13 days later, Clostridium perfringens was introduced. Yep, we saw that. And we were able to say at that point, look out, because it's coming. And that, at that
and how
point,
much notice are you giving? What is the whole point of this is early warning, isn't it? Real-time analysis for early warning. So how many days ahead of the clinical signs, the physical signs, are you with VOC?
Right. Well, the first good thing with VOCs is VOCs don't rely on symptoms. So they will see asymptomatic cases as clearly as they'll see symptomatic cases. The other thing is we typically expect to see disease outbreaks 1 to 2 days earlier. We're actually waiting. We're doing some trials with APHA. They've got some issues with their containment facility at the moment. But when it's free, we're going to be looking at Newcastle disease and obviously avian influenza. And the hope is that we should be 2 to 4 days ahead of when symptoms make the condition of the birds obvious. So again, that's something that would be very useful. The most important thing that I haven't mentioned that should be mentioned with VOCs is the fact that all samples have to be collected in an enclosed space. So, for example, although we expect to be able to see avian influenza really clearly in an enclosed space, we can't promise to see it when a wild bird lands on the farm, because the VOCs would be just too diluted. And also the bird probably wouldn't hang around for the hour that we would need it to be able to gather in the VOCs.
No, but I think everyone needs, from a biosecurity point of view, needs to assume that avian influenza is there and keep that mindset, really, isn't it? So in terms of the timeline of this technology, you were saying you've got prototypes out in the field now. So how close is this technology to being something that a farmer could buy off of the shelf and use on their own farm?
Right. Well, for broilers, it would be, we're hoping by the middle of next year. With egg-laying flocks, at the moment I'm talking to some farmers who will be doing some air sampling so that we can get just a basic feel for what VOC signatures of laying sheds look like. Then we need to look at the diseases and ensure we can identify those. Then we need to trial it on farm. So that will be about 2027 before it's actually working. The really good news is that the box is ready, because the box was just a nightmare, because obviously you've got all these moving parts and all these mechanical engineering bits and pieces that you have to make working. The sensors actually were a doddle compared to just getting the mechanics right. So we reckon early 2027 for egg layers. And then obviously we'll be looking at hatcheries and the rearing farms as well.
Can I ask the dreaded cost question, Angela, for a broiler shed? What's the setup cost?
We need to confirm how many units we'd need in a laying flock. In a broiler flock, we think it's 1 or 2, maybe 2. It depends how big. But again, the density of the birds tends to be higher. So that would probably be 1 box, maybe 2. The boxes themselves, the sensing boxes, come in at about £7,000 to £8,000 a unit. But of course, once they're in, then they just sit there and they do all of the sampling, all of the testing, all of the processing, all of the reporting every day on their own without any additional costs. We are going to have a subscription model, obviously, that will go along with that to ensure that we're managing the data appropriately for people. And we will also, in addition to that, we'll be collecting everybody's data and anonymizing it to ensure that the whole system just improves its performance as it develops.
No,
if people want to learn more, listening to you on the podcast, we should obviously put some details in the chat, as it were, underneath this. But what would you encourage people to do?
Well, get in touch with me. I mean, they can email me, they can call me. I'm very happy to talk to people, or they can go to our website where we've got some very basic information on at the moment. I'm afraid I am our webmaster, and as you've already learned, my technology isn't that great, so it's there. But yes,
fantastic.
And the other thing is obviously we're on LinkedIn. That's the other one. So yeah,
great. Well, thank you ever so much for talking to us today, Angela. It sounds really exciting and very interested to see where this goes. I think it's just amazing how we really seem to be at a point where really new exciting technologies are coming along at a pace of knots, and things that we thought were pie in the sky, would have thought a few years ago, now are really starting to bear fruit. So yeah, excited to see how things go once they actually start getting out in chicken sheds and people start using them.
I think the integration of those sensors in the sheds with the support services into farms, vets or processing companies, etc., and taking a kind of holistic view of how the environment that the birds are being kept in is changing, and then being that much faster on the response times, points to a serious development in progress in the industry as a whole. We'd love to think in only a handful of years down the track, maybe this will become kind of commonplace in commercial poultry.
Thank you.
All right, we'll wrap it up there. Just a quick reminder to anyone who is listening or watching and hasn't subscribed, please subscribe to the podcast. That way you won't miss one when it comes out every week. But otherwise, we'll see you next week. Goodbye.